Commissioner Ben-Veniste.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is directed to Ms. Ryan. First, I want to express my personal gratitude for your long service to the interests of this country and recognize the difficulties under which you operated during the period most at issue here. However, following up on Secretary Lehman's question and looking at the fact that the terrorists were able to exploit a vulnerability that they perceived in the system, particularly with respect to Saudi passports and visas. I see something of a disconnect in the situation as you described it. Here in the summer of '01 and somewhat before, you have recognized that crowd control at the embassy or the consular offices in Saudi Arabia posed a problem because of potential harm to individuals from those who meant the United States and its interests harm. If we take that just one step further, would you agree that the individuals in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia who might pose such a threat to cause harm to individuals at or about the embassy would be Saudis rather than foreigners? Would you accept that?
That the people who mean us harm would be more likely to be Saudis than
yes. The people who you were talking about who posed a threat to the numbers of individuals who were seeking visas in Saudi Arabia must have been largely Saudis.
Yes, they would probably be largely Saudis, although there were a lot of third country nationals in Saudi Arabia who also applied for visas.
And I guess on the issue of the disconnect that Secretary Lehman was talking about, once you acknowledge that there is certainly a number of Saudis who might be in a position to do us harm through violence against individuals at or near our consular offices, it doesn't take a whole lot to go to the next step, even without specific information from our intelligence agencies, that such individuals who mean us harm might, in fact, wish to come to the United States. So the notion, would you not agree, of Saudis not posing a particular threat, being taken out of that threat matrix, really doesn't stand up even on the basis of cursory information that you had available.
I'm not sure I'm following you. I'm sorry.
Saudis mean us harm in Saudi Arabia because they might blow up the embassy or harm individuals in the vicinity of the embassy, but the Saudis who might seek entrance to the United States were not considered a problem.
Well, of course they were considered a problem. They required visas. They were checked through our consular lookout systems. You know, in the absence of information that someone is a threat to the nation, we are dependent on the information that we have in our system developed by intelligence and law enforcement agencies about people who mean us harm. I don't imagine that, I don't know, but I can't imagine that you would think that we could, on the basis of the fact that some people might mean us harm, not issue visas to the entire nationality.
I'm not suggesting that, but that then begs the question of the usefulness of individuals in face-to-face interviews during periods of increased threat where there is some suggestion of potential wrongdoers. And I think we'll hear next from a witness who makes that point very explicitly. Let me turn to another issue which hasn't, I think, been brought up to this point, and that is the issue of the use of interpreters by the consular service in the visa application process. It has come to our attention from individuals who have had considerable experience that there is a problem, and perhaps a widespread problem, with respect to corrupt interpreters who are brought into the process because consular officers, often in certain countries, do not have a language facility in the native language of that country. And therefore, the consular office must rely upon an interpreter to assist in the visa application process, in the interview process. Had it come to your attention as of the time that you left the service that this was an issue, and what, if anything, had been done during your tenure to try to correct it?
This all goes back to the fact that we don't have enough staff and enough money in the State Department. We recognize that it's a tremendous advantage if officers, consular and otherwise, speak the language of the country and don't have to depend on interpreters. But we don't have enough people to be able to put officers into language training, long-term language training, which Arabic would be, or Chinese or Russian or Korean or Japanese, because we've never had a person in motion. We've never had enough people to do that. And so that's always a concern, that's always a worry, that an interpreter might not be interpreting accurately. It's one of the handicaps that the State Department operates under.
But could I interrupt you for just a moment and ask you whether, rather in the theoretical, you did not have some practical and substantial information that in various places in the world, for a relatively small amount of money, an interpreter could be bribed to provide the answers that the consular officer needed to hear in order to approve a visa?
I'd never heard that about Saudi Arabia.
I'm not limiting my question to Saudi Arabia. At many places throughout the world, you had not heard of such a problem?
If I remember correctly, there was a problem once at one post that I knew of at the time, where the interpreter was not interpreting accurately, and a Foreign Service national, one of the locally engaged staff, heard that and advised the officer. But that it's a widespread problem, no, I'm not aware of that. I was not aware of that.
Thank you.